After a bad car accident, I asked her to pick me up from the ER. She replied, "Sorry, I'm at lunch with my male best friend, can't just leave." I texted, "Okay." What the police officer told her when they approached her table at the restaurant changed everything about her dinner with her friend. You learn a lot about people in a crisis. I know this because I'm a paramedic. I see people on the worst day of their lives, every single day. I see how they react, how they treat each other when the sirens are wailing and the world is falling apart. I've seen strangers hold hands with the dying. I've seen husbands weep over their injured wives. I've seen the absolute best of humanity in the absolute worst of times. And then there was my girlfriend, Kate, and a car accident that showed me the absolute truth of her character. We had been together for 2 years. We lived in my apartment, a place I'd worked my tail off to afford. On the surface, things were good. She was fun, beautiful, and the life of every party. I was the quiet, stable one. I thought we were a good match. I provided the calm, and she provided the excitement. The only real point of friction was her male best friend, a guy named Julian. Julian was a trust fund kid who worked as a consultant, which seemed to mean he had lunch at expensive restaurants 4 times a week and offered unsolicited advice. Kate and Julian were inseparable. Their bond was, as she always described it, special. They had inside jokes I was never a part of, and their text conversations were constant and secretive. I'm not a jealous guy by nature. My job has taught me to be calm under pressure. But the closeness between them always felt off. It felt like I was the third wheel in their 2-person story. Still, I trusted her. I chose to believe her when she said they were just friends. That trust was violently and permanently shattered last Tuesday. I was on my way home from a long shift. It was raining hard. A kid in a souped-up Civic ran a red light and T-boned me right in the driver's side door. It was a brutal impact. The world was a chaotic mess of screeching metal, shattering glass, and the sickening crunch of my car folding in around me. The next thing I remember is my colleagues, my fellow paramedics, pulling me out of the wreckage. I was strapped to a backboard, my head was pounding, and my left arm was definitely broken. As they were loading me into the ambulance, a police officer I knew, a good cop named Dave, leaned in. "Hey man," he said, his face grim. "Your car is totaled. We're having it towed. We need an emergency contact to notify about the accident and the vehicle's location. Who do you want us to call?" "My girlfriend, Kate," I managed to say through the pain. I gave him her number. The ride to the ER was a blur. They cut my uniform off me, pumped me full of painkillers, and started running tests. X-rays confirmed it. A clean break in my left humerus and a moderate concussion. No internal bleeding, thank God. I was beaten up, bruised from head to toe, but I was going to be okay. After about an hour, a nurse came in. "We've tried calling your emergency contact, Kate, a few times," she said. "No answer. Is there someone else we can call?" My heart sank. No answer? I knew exactly where she was. It was Tuesday. Tuesday was her standing long lunch day with Julian. I pulled out my phone with my good hand. My screen was shattered, but it still worked. I sent her a text. "Hey, I've been in a bad car accident. I'm in the ER at St. Mary's. My arm is broken. Can you come pick me up? Car is totaled." I waited. A few minutes later, the 3 little dots appeared. Then, her reply. It was a message that would change the entire course of my life. "Kate, OMG, that's awful. So sorry to hear that. But I'm actually in the middle of a really important lunch with Julian right now. Can't just leave. Can you get a taxi or something? Let me know how it goes." I read the text once. Then I read it again. I felt a strange, cold clarity wash over me, cutting through the haze of the painkillers. She wasn't just dismissing me. She was prioritizing a social lunch with another man over my genuine, verifiable emergency. I was in the hospital, and she was worried about interrupting her appetizer. The final pillar of our relationship had just crumbled into dust. I thought about the police officer, Dave. I thought about the fact that they still needed to make official contact with her. And a plan began to form. A cold, precise, and beautifully appropriate plan. I took a screenshot of her text message. Then I texted back a single word. "Okay." Then I called Officer Dave. "Hey Dave," I said, my voice steady. "It's Adam Sterling. Thanks for your help at the scene. Listen, I know you guys were trying to reach my emergency contact, Kate. She's not answering her phone, but I know exactly where she is. It's important you make contact with her to complete the report. She's at a restaurant called the Gilded Spoon, downtown. I think it's crucial that an officer speaks to her in person to inform her of the situation." Dave, being a good cop and a good friend, understood immediately. "No problem, Adam," he said, a new edge in his voice. "We'll dispatch a unit right away to make an in-person notification. You just focus on getting better." I hung up the phone. I leaned back against the hospital pillows. Kate was having a very important lunch. I had a feeling it was about to be interrupted. Update 1. The hour I spent waiting in that ER bed was one of the most clarifying of my life. The physical pain was still there, a dull, throbbing ache in my arm and my head, but the emotional pain had been replaced by a kind of icy resolve. The betrayal was so absolute, so profound, that it had short-circuited all my normal feelings of hurt and sadness. All that was left was a quiet, focused anger and a need for decisive action. My friend and colleague Mike, who had been on the ambulance that brought me in, came to check on me. He took one look at my face and knew something was wrong. And it wasn't just the broken arm. "What's up, man?" he asked. "You look like you're about to declare war." I showed him the text from Kate. He read it and his face hardened. "You're kidding me," he said, his voice low. "She chose lunch over this, with that Julian guy?" "She did," I confirmed. "So what are you gonna do?" he asked. "I already did it," I said. "I had the police dispatched to her restaurant to make an in-person notification." Mike stared at me for a second, and then he let out a low whistle. "Dude, that is savage and brilliant." The story of what happened at the Gilded Spoon came to me later from Officer Dave, who had heard it directly from the 2 patrol officers he had sent. It was even better than I had imagined. The Gilded Spoon is one of those places that's all about appearances. It's expensive, it's trendy, and it's always filled with people who want to be seen. Kate and Julian were apparently seated at a prime table near the window, laughing and sharing a bottle of overpriced rosé. 2 uniformed police officers walked into the restaurant. The place immediately went quiet. Cops don't just show up at a place like that for no reason. People started staring, whispering. The officers walked calmly and deliberately through the dining room, their eyes scanning the tables. They stopped directly at Kate and Julian's table. One of the officers, a tall, imposing guy with a serious face, looked directly at Kate. "Ma'am, are you Kate Miller?" he asked, his voice calm but loud enough for the surrounding tables to hear clearly. Kate looked up, her face a mask of confusion and annoyance. "Yes," she said. "Is there a problem, officer? We're here regarding a major vehicle collision involving your partner, Mr. Adam Sterling," the officer stated, his tone flat and official. He was transported by ambulance to St. Mary's Hospital from the scene of the accident with significant injuries. The color drained from Kate's face. Julian was staring, his wine glass frozen halfway to his lips. The officer continued, his voice unwavering. "His vehicle was totaled in the collision. We have been attempting to contact you for the last 2 hours as you are listed as his primary emergency contact. Mr. Sterling informed us we could find you here. He asked us to make official, in-person notification of the incident and to inform you that you will need to coordinate with the towing company regarding the removal of any personal effects from the vehicle." Every word was a hammer blow. Major vehicle collision. Transported by ambulance. Significant injuries. Vehicle totaled. Emergency contact. The officer wasn't accusing her of anything. He was just stating the cold, hard, official facts. But in doing so, he was painting a picture for everyone in that restaurant to see. A man was in the hospital after a serious accident, and his girlfriend, his emergency contact, was enjoying a leisurely lunch with another man, completely unreachable. Julian, according to the story, looked at Kate with a new expression. The charming lunch companion was gone, replaced by a man looking at a stranger who had just revealed a core of shocking selfishness. The officer concluded his speech. "That is all, ma'am. You should probably head to the hospital." The 2 officers then turned and walked out of the restaurant as calmly as they had entered. They left behind a crater of silence, a table of half-eaten food, and the shattered reputation of a woman who had just been publicly exposed at her most callous. Her very important lunch was officially over. Update 2. The immediate aftermath was a predictable storm of chaos, which I observed from the calm, safe harbor of my hospital room. After being discharged from the ER with my arm in a sling and a handful of prescriptions, my sister came to pick me up. She had been my real emergency contact all along, and I had called her as soon as I was done with the police. The fury in her voice when I told her the story about Kate was enough to power a small city. She took me back to her place to recover. I had no intention of going back to my apartment until it had been purged of Kate's presence. Kate, of course, started blowing up my phone. A string of frantic texts and missed calls. "Adam, I'm on my way to the hospital. I'm so sorry, my phone was on silent." A classic, pathetic lie. "Where are you? They said you were discharged. Why aren't you answering me? I'm freaking out." "This is all your fault. You sent the cops to my lunch to humiliate me." The progression from feigned concern to furious accusation was swift and telling. I didn't reply to any of it. I just blocked her number. The real story of her afternoon came from Julian. He, it turns out, was not interested in being a supporting character in her drama. He sent me a message on social media that evening. It was surprisingly direct. "Hey Adam," it read. "I don't know you well, but I was with Kate at lunch today. I just want you to know that I had no idea about your accident." The second the police left, I paid my half of the bill and got out of there. The way she dismissed something so serious, that's not a person I want to be associated with. I'm sorry for whatever part I played in your relationship issues. I'm done with her. Hope you have a fast recovery. It was a self-serving message, of course, designed to absolve himself of any guilt. But it confirmed my victory. I hadn't just humiliated her. I had exposed her true character to the very person she was trying to impress. She had lost her boyfriend and her best friend in the same afternoon. With my sister's help, I put the rest of my plan into motion. While I rested, she acted as my general. She called a moving company that specialized in content removal for breakups. She met them at my apartment the next day. They packed every single thing Kate owned, every piece of clothing, every shoe, every book, into boxes. They were instructed to leave the boxes neatly stacked in the living room. Then, my sister called a locksmith. The locks were changed. Finally, she sent a formal email to Kate from a new email address. The subject line was "Retrieval of Personal Property." The email read, "Kate, this email is to inform you that your relationship with Adam Sterling has been terminated. As you are not on the lease for his apartment, your residency has also been terminated. All of your personal belongings have been packed. You have a 48-hour window to arrange for their professional removal. You are to contact me, Adam's sister, at this email address to schedule a specific 2-hour time slot. You will be met at the property and allowed entry for the sole purpose of removing your belongings. You will not be permitted to remain in the apartment afterward. If your property is not removed within the 48-hour window, it will be considered abandoned and will be disposed of. Any attempt to contact Adam directly will be considered harassment." It was cold, it was legal, and it was final. She had abandoned me in my moment of need. I was now treating her with the same impersonal, logistical detachment. Final update. It has been 7 months since the accident. My arm has healed, the concussion is a distant memory, and my life is blessedly, wonderfully quiet. Kate, as instructed, coordinated with my sister to retrieve her belongings. The story I got was that she showed up with her father, looking sullen and defeated. She didn't say a word the entire time. She just directed the movers her father had hired, cleared out her boxes, and left the key on the counter. The social fallout for her was, from what I hear, absolute. The story of the police showing up at the Gilded Spoon became a legendary piece of gossip in her social circle. It was a story with no good spin. No one could defend her actions. She was the woman who chose brunch over her boyfriend in the ER. Her attempts to paint me as a manipulative villain failed spectacularly because the core facts were so damning. She lost most of her friends, not because they were loyal to me, but because they were embarrassed to be associated with her. She tried to reach out to me about a month ago. A long, rambling email full of excuses and non-apologies. She said she had panicked. She said she wasn't thinking clearly. She said Julian had put a lot of pressure on her. It was a masterclass in blame shifting. She concluded by saying she missed me and the stable life we had, and that she had learned her lesson. I didn't reply. I just created a new filter in my email to send anything from her address directly to the trash. Her lesson was not my concern. My revenge was not about the police or the public scene. That was just the delivery mechanism. The real revenge was in the quiet, decisive way I excised her from my life. She had treated me as an inconvenience, a background character in her exciting life. So I simply wrote her out of my script. I took the life I had built, the stability she had taken for granted, and I made it mine again, completely and totally. The most satisfying part is the quiet knowledge that I saw the truth and acted on it without hesitation. A relationship is a partnership, and the first rule of a partnership is that you show up when it counts. She didn't just fail the test, she set the test paper on fire and walked away laughing. The look on her face when the police officer approached her table was just the first consequence. The empty apartment, the silent phone, the life she lost, those were the real lessons. She couldn't risk getting sick before her fun trip. In the end, I was the one who was cured. I got rid of the sickness in my life, and that sickness was her.